Everybody, welcome to the Daily Objective, and we're going to be talking about the topic that's all over the news right now, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, the trial going on, the defamation lawsuit. We'll get into the what, the how, the when, and the why, and the where as well. Now, real quick, leave a like on this video, hit that join button if you want to become a member and unlock all types of features and support the channel. If you're watching this after the fact, hit the thanks button and show us your support. All right. Let's get down to business. I'm here with somebody who, well, let me say, a very long time ago in my younger days, on Wednesdays like this, I'd be going to the courthouse, you know, to face the music, to face the judge, the allegations of possession of marijuana and, you know, paraphernalia, whatever that means. Apparently, 2 digital scales are a type of drug paraphernalia. I thought this is a land of science and technology. But today I'm happy to say I am surprised and delighted to see I'm now working with a prosecuting attorney. Now we are on the same side.
Well, it's obvious you were a criminal of the century there with the kind of crimes you were committing back in the day there, Rucka.
Well,
so
we're here now. We are cleaning up these streets together now. I'm on the right side of the law. We are going to show these scumbags that we are in a land of law and order. Please welcome James Valliant.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, we can get into the whole experience of being a prosecutor another day. So what do you, have you been following this trial closely?
Well, not from a personal desire myself, but I have to say my wife is a total forensic courtroom junkie. She loves every courtroom story. She's attached to it. So sort of against my will, piggybacked upon my wife's obsession with the trial, I haven't missed much of any detail. I saw most of Johnny Depp's testimony. I saw most of the psychologist's testimony. I saw most of his witnesses' testimony. And I saw much of Amber Heard and her psychologist's testimony, because we're now in her case. So yes, I have been following it somewhat against my will, but yes. And yes, I was a California prosecutor for about 18 years.
Wow. Okay. So here's what I understand to be the case. Amber Heard and Johnny Depp were together in a serious relationship. And at one point after that fact, Amber Heard published an op-ed in the Washington Post or a newspaper like that, where she doesn't name Johnny Depp, but some would say strongly implies that she's writing about Johnny Depp, accusing the subject of being an abusive partner. And Johnny Depp believes he can prove damages up to $50 million that it had on his career and life. So is that basically what's going on?
That's basically it. They started dating in 2012. They had a rough and difficult courtship, I think is the best way to put it. From 2015 to 2017, they were married for less than a year and a half before they went to divorce court. And at the end of 2018, she published in December 2018, she published in the Washington Post an op-ed claiming to be the victim of sexual violence and domestic abuse. And it was pretty obvious because she said it came from her spouse. The only recent spouse she'd had was Johnny Depp. So I don't think that was and you don't in law have to prove that they've named it so long as you've specified who you're talking about well enough. And nobody in Hollywood and nobody in America got the wrong idea. It was clear she was talking about Johnny Depp. I don't think that's the legal difficulty here, but it is a civil case. A case in which neither party has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury. No one goes to jail here. It's just about money. And boy, is it about money. Johnny Depp has sued her for $50 million damages as a result of hurting his career in Hollywood. And she's countersued for twice that, $100 million for his denial being defamation against her.
Wow. I didn't even know that last part. So she is doubling down quite literally.
Right.
So I get it. So is Johnny Depp saying he no longer was getting the same opportunities? Like maybe he wasn't in the final Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and that would have maybe earned him a whole lot of money. So there's an emotional component because he had played this character on Pirates of the Caribbean for so long, and I think he mentioned in court like it was very sad that like he couldn't have these characters say goodbye to each other in the universe they'd crafted. So. I don't know how much damage you can prove when it comes to that type of emotional thing.
Well,
so like if he was just doing community theater and he missed out an opportunity to say goodbye as that character, obviously no one would give him $50 million. So he's mostly suing, I think, for the money he would have made playing that character. And it's not so much about the fact that it hurt him on a spiritual level.
He called three important witnesses here. His agent at the big, he obviously has the biggest talent agency in Hollywood. So he called his agent who works at that agency, and he said, look, we'd settled on the price for Pirates 6, and we were in active negotiations. But the minute this happened, discussions ended, and it was clear that the president of Disney and Bruckheimer, the director of the Pirates films, no longer was interested in having Johnny Depp in it. And that's huge because Johnny Depp, the price that they'd settled for was something like $22 million plus a cut of the film, residual cut of the film. He was a partial owner of the film, in effect. So, and then they did a comparison. They had a famous Hollywood, a very famous Hollywood attorney describe what it did to his reputation in Hollywood and how it dried up. They went through his income before the accusation and his income after. Studio offers, there's a big difference between indie films, which don't pay nearly so much as big studio films like Disney or Sony films. And they showed that he was, studio film offers just completely dried up for him following this. So I think he actually proved that it affected his career. To the degree, I'm not sure, because going by their math, of course, it's, some $50+ million worth of offers he did not get in the wake of this accusation. Now, he didn't have a stellar reputation before, as the defense has pointed out. He was well known. People had called him a wife beater long before this, but it was in something like, the Sun tabloid from London, the one with that sells on page 3 women's boobs to sell their tabloid. So coming from that, it's a lot less credible than coming from a firsthand account of your wife in the Washington Post. And that's what Johnny's arguing.
Okay. And in the super chat, Mary Aline asks, why would the Post publish such a thing? Referring to Amber Heard's op-ed.
One of the most fascinating aspects of this is the curtain was sort of drawn back on how these op-eds get published in major newspapers. Amber Heard was not the one behind this. The American Civil Liberties Union wanted to use Amber Heard's big name to drum up donations. We heard expert testimony that this is the bread and butter of organizations like the ACLU. This is how they get donations, by getting famous celebrities to say, I was a victim of something that they're interested in, and then that gets them a bunch of donations to the ACLU. So before this ever ran, behind the scenes, Amber Heard was working with lawyers from the ACLU to craft this. She wasn't the primary author of this. She was the author of the personal experience stuff. She wanted it, apparently, because we had got the email exchange between her and the ACLU that came into evidence. She wanted it to be more specific about Johnny. She wanted it to be more specific about her own experiences. They kind of backed off being lawyers, and they were kind of afraid of the legal consequences. It's still pretty much obvious what they were doing, but they were doing it for political purposes. They were doing it to drum up donations and to be part of the Me Too movement, which was then all the rage. I mean, that was the very year that Harvey Weinstein allegation, that swine Harvey Weinstein's allegations came to light. And so they were doing it for political reasons to cash in. And we can kind of see behind the scenes, because the ACLU has got the oomph to get something into the Washington Post as an op-ed. And so celebrities, big advocacy organizations work together to create these op-eds that we often see in major news outlets, which a fact that people don't often realize, but has all come to light through this trial.
Amazing. So there was a real, might still be, but there definitely was a few years ago, a real kind of trend, you could say, of like women speaking up and saying like, here's what I went through and I'm done staying silent. And probably in many cases, maybe in the vast majority of cases, this was an empowering thing, an important step towards eliminating that, abuse. But of course, there are going to be some cases where it's completely misleading and dishonest, and it's bad people taking advantage of a situation where they can sort of cash in and take advantage of people's benevolence and desire to fix the world. Is that how you see this particular case?
When I was
allegedly?
When I was a prosecutor, there were substantial periods of my career that I devoted to the prosecution of domestic violence at all levels. substantial portion of my career was devoted to rape, including spousal rape and aggravated rape cases, in which I actually helped train nurses and cops in response to rape. I feel very, very strongly about rape. And I feel very, very strongly that Hollywood was mired in a horrible system for actors and actresses having to prostitute themselves, in effect, to get parts. And it has been a notorious scandal for decades. And I am very pleased that finally in the 21st century, some light was thrown on that. Now, that's one side. On the other side, as a prosecutor, I am acutely aware that false accusations are my greatest enemy, and the victims of these crimes' greatest enemies. I think back to the Kavanaugh Supreme Court justice attacks. Those were all pretty much demonstrably false attacks of sexual assault and abuse of women that were lodged against Kavanaugh. And those kind of false attacks, so publicly ballyhooed, can only hurt the credibility and the believability of women who come forward with the courage to make these accusations. Domestic violence and rape are highly underreported crimes. I spent a good deal of my career pleading with women to do the brave thing and come forward. And false accusations make it harder for women to be believed and all the more difficult for women to come forward. These false accusers, these women falsely accusing people of domestic violence and rape, are doing more to harm and to increase sexual violence and domestic violence against women than maybe any other single factor in our society. So with that layout, I have very strong feelings about both the false accusing of it and about the crime itself, which I do believe is a serious one that's underreported.
Yeah, it's amazing how false accusations and just like charlatan type people taking advantage of people's goodwill and promoting like false cases. It ends up a lot of people end up losing credibility, or people don't pay attention to their claims when something bad really does happen. And ironically enough, when I first was hearing about all this Johnny Depp stuff, I was just kind of brushing it off like whatever. All these anti-feminists are always getting excited when they think there's an innocent man who was falsely accused. So who knows if he's innocent or not. So I kind of brushed this off as well. But like today, I actually looked at some of the facts around this, and I'm like, wow, Johnny Depp, by all indications, really was the victim of a smear tactic, a smearing.
Well, I'd caution the audience at this point. We've heard Johnny Depp's case in chief. We've just now started hearing Amber Heard's. They have the week off right now for some weird reason, so we won't get back into Amber's case. But Amber's not done presenting her evidence. Mm-hmm. After, however, Johnny, I have to generally agree, after having heard Johnny Depp's case in chief, I thought it was a relatively strong one, given the horrific accusations on both sides, given the fact that this was a toxic relationship filled with mutual emotional abuse. These people, I mean, talk about cliches about, out of touch, decadent Hollywood types. Disney, for example, had arranged for the Depps to have a home in Australia when they were filming Pirates of the Caribbean 5. They flew Johnny Depp out there. The shooting would go on for months, so they got a really nice house for him. But it was Disney, in effect, Disney leasing the house for them. During one of the most horrific moments of the trial that was described, they trashed the place. Both of them completely destroyed. There was $50,000 worth of interior home damage. Marble was cracked. The parquet floors had to be completely resanded. Mirrors were destroyed. Johnny Depp was painting first in his bloody finger abuse against Amber. She came back with her own lipstick verbal abuse on it. Now, obviously, you and I would have a little concern for the fact that, well, someone would have to clean up after this, or that this isn't our house, or why are we wantonly destroying property because we hate each other? So talk about losing all connection with the ordinary juror or the ordinary American and filling in with this cliche of decadent Hollywood people. Both of them were using drugs in the most abusive, self-destructive way you can imagine, especially Johnny Depp, who had to come clean about the most serious alcohol problem, opiate problem, cocaine problem. The man was a mess. The couple were in a toxic relationship. They were verbally abusing each other even before they were married. So it sort of fits this, Johnny Depp owns his own private island on the Bahamas. At this swank building in downtown LA, he owns multiple penthouses. So the poor jury is completely convinced that these are people who are living a life that just comes right out of the cliches of the tabloids, in effect. And they have a toxic relationship and they're destroying themselves decadently with drugs, as we imagine so many Hollywood people doing.
Yeah, there's so many dynamic elements to this whole thing. I'm thinking so in some ways, the glamour of the celebrity lifestyle has sort of taken a hit in recent decades with the internet, and now everyone's scrutinizing everything. So it's almost like, do you still want to be famous? There's that element of it, and also as we see, having crazy levels of wealth, also makes people not necessarily be able to relate to you, and so let's say a jury might not feel sorry for you. One thing that occurs to me is, and I don't want this to come off like victim blaming. If Johnny Depp is a serious victim here, he certainly does not deserve to be the victim. But this is a reminder, to live an upstanding life. I mentioned earlier, I faced marijuana possession charges in my younger days. I lived a little bit of a reckless lifestyle. And I kind of see that living kind of a hedonistic lifestyle, even if you don't actually hurt anyone, you end up around the types of people a lot of the time that could cause you unnecessary damage. You could end up not being up to the task of defending yourself or up to the task of just dealing with what needs to be dealt with in life. So all types of problems, I think, have come into Johnny Depp's life just because he wasn't being the best version of himself for so many years. And that's really one of the biggest lessons to take away, I think.
Absolutely. Now, the accusations that are flying back and forth are, do reveal a sort of toxic, certainly emotionally abusive relationship. If you ask me as a criminal prosecutor who prosecuted domestic violence and rape cases, would I charge these cases criminally? Johnny Depp accuses Amber Heard of repeatedly hitting him. He accuses her of throwing a full bottle of alcohol at him when his hand was on the counter, cutting off the end of his finger. Now that's a felony battery if he was seriously injured like that and had to have the end of his finger reattached. And he also presented evidence that from a bodyguard of his where Amber clearly just punched him in the face, swung back. He has an independent witness to that, being punched in the face by Amber Heard when she approached him in the penthouse in Los Angeles afterwards. So he has some corroboration to the battery part of it. It's not clear yet the full cause of how his finger got cut. It's only his word saying she threw the bottle, and she's going to deny that. And of course, it's a bodyguard who only saw a punch, but nonetheless, when she claimed that there was violence, for example, he threw something at her and pegged her in the face. The cops responded. And the cops very credibly said, she never complained of anything. We saw no injuries. There was no disturbance in the penthouse. We saw absolutely no corroboration for her claim of violence. And we have her on tape. Now get this. They had such a healthy relationship that they secretly started to tape one another's conversations. Oh, isn't that healthy? So now we're hearing these tapes, and Amber herself admits to hitting Johnny Depp repeatedly. And there's nothing on the tape really that corroborates or confirms the stuff that she's saying. She claims, on the other hand, that she was repeatedly sexually assaulted in the most brutal way. In Australia, I don't know if this is going to trigger some YouTube filter or something, but she claims to have been violently penetrated with a bottle when she was in Australia, and that he repeatedly, against her will, penetrated her. From my perspective, that's a serious, serious felony of repeated sexual assaults. She never called the police. The marriage counseling that they were in, she never told the counselor. This nurse that was seeing her through this period never noted any injuries or heard a complaint about this from her. So I know she's gonna have her sister and friends come in later. So we should keep an open, I will be like the judge, keep an open mind until we hear all the evidence from Amber. Let's not make final decisions yet. But in my view, she has nowhere near corroborated the hugely serious allegations that would be I mean, if someone accused you of repeatedly raping them, that would be devastating to you. And for Hollywood stars, it is their career, their reputation. So if what she say, I mean, if that's what in the Washington Post, she said sexual abuse. And so given that, on the face of it, it looks like she's making serious allegations. Well, no criminal prosecutor would prosecute based on the evidence. And I can tell you that as a former DA, there's no way a criminal case would be charged on this. There's no way we could prove this to a jury, what she's saying. And then, of course, there was the battle between the psychologists. She claimed that she was a victim of post-traumatic abuse from his domestic violence. By doing that, she put her psychology into issue, and the court could order a forensic shrink to come in. And boy, in Johnny Depp's case in chief, she was a devastating witness who gave a devastating diagnosis. She's not a victim. I gave her the gold standard test on PTSD. She's not a victim of traumatic stress. More than that, she is, according to that diagnosis, borderline personality with histrionic personality disorder as well. Exactly the kind of person who would make stuff up, the kind of person who would chase after someone who's trying to leave the scene. And we have repeated evidence from witnesses that says that when things got ugly in an argument, Johnny would try to walk away and leave the scene. We have independent witnesses that says she chased after him, trying to pull him back, pull his hair to bring him back to the heated argument. And that doesn't really help her case as a domestic violence victim, you see. And so far, and we've only had the Johnny Depp part of the case, it's going Depp's way. But I, like a judge will tell the jury, don't form any final opinions until you've heard all the evidence and Amber's side. But her psychologist was, in my view, a hired gun. She was hired only after the litigation began, and she's basically giving the opinion. She believes everything Amber says, just believes it without any physical corroboration or medical corroboration or law enforcement corroboration of these serious allegations. Her shrink, of course, believes her, and therefore she was a victim and ... So it's sort of a battle between experts. In my opinion, Depp's expert's a little better than hers. Depp has some corroboration to being a victim of domestic violence. So far, I have not seen, and it's a so far, I haven't seen any corroboration of the really serious charges she's making against Depp. But we're still in mid-trial.
And she could also face some serious perjury type charges if it turns out she was lying under oath. Is that correct in a civil suit like this?
It is. Anytime you lie under oath in court, it is the felony, and that's a serious felony of lying in court. Those rarely are brought against losing, very frequently people will take the stand in their own defense, and even if they lose the case, and even if the jury believes they were liars, very rarely are perjury charges brought. I doubt that in a civil case of this kind, they would, because remember, the perjury is a crime. You'd have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm not sure either side can prove what they're saying beyond a reasonable doubt. I think it's a civil case. It doesn't require a unanimous jury. On the other hand, it's basically a who do you believe kind of situation, since there's no real physical evidence of injury.
Other than many people's testimonies that corroborate one side more than the other.
Exactly.
So we got a lot more to jump to in the chat here. But, I'm reminded of how some people, Marxists or people similar to that, they think that everyone's just motivated by money. Everyone is just motivated by their economic interests, right? It's not your values. It's not what you believe is right and wrong. It can only be money that talks. And I will point to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard making ungodly money, and they have one job basically, other than acting and showing up to the set. Their other job is don't do everything they're doing the way they're living. Like, just don't act crazy. Don't be in a violent relationship with fellow crazies. Just keep your head low and sit around and count your money. That's basically just stay out of trouble. But as we can see, I mean, people are complex, and they have a lot going on in their inner world that is not only just a matter of how many dollars and cents they can get.
Absolutely right. I think the main reason why Johnny Depp brought this suit in the first place has nothing to do with the outcome. I think when the allegations, these serious allegations came forward after the thing, the op-ed came out, Amber kept talking about the horrible things that happened to her. Given the fact that he would never get a public hearing on his side, I think he's doing it just so he can take the stand, just so he can present his evidence and sort of mitigate the bad reputation, whatever the outcome of the case. Now, on the other hand, you have evidence that Amber Heard wanted the op-ed on her sexual and domestic abuse to come out and dovetail right perfect with the release of her Aquaman movie, which was going to be her biggest movie. And so she wanted to make sure that everyone was coordinating the timing on this so that her Me Too op-ed would come out right when Aquaman was released, her big studio movie.
All right, jumping over to the chat here. Ellie has joined as a member. Welcome to the channel. Ellie, check out your emoji keyboard, see if there's some new surprises there. And more emojis coming soon. The more members we get, the more we can add. Bonnie with 149, thank you for that. Allie with $2 says, so why has WB's kept Amber around? I think that's Warner Brothers. Is that like, I don't get it, she says. So I think that's Warner Brothers, like, right? Like Amber Heard was in Aquaman and other stuff like that, like other Warner Brothers.
Too. And now that she's in big studio movies, she's got a big studio career that could make her millions and millions of dollars, right? I think that at this stage, Amber Heard, before the trial, I think Amber Heard has had the better of the PR situation. She's the woman. And given that situation, they haven't dropped her. It's interesting too. Johnny Depp's career, I'm not sure, is completely destroyed. It's true that the experts came in and said, a whole year passed and he got no attention from the studios that he normally was getting. He was getting scripts from big studios in the years just before this because of his big success with Pirates, and that dried up. But so it's always going to be an argument. But the point is that he has evidence that he did not get Pirates of the Caribbean 6, which could have made him tens of millions of dollars just by itself as a result of this.
And it's worth pointing out, by the way, like imagine if Johnny Depp wasn't so handsome and talented and he wasn't America's sweetheart and the world's sweetheart, and this beautiful woman is accusing him of a lot of these things. Like how, like people, let's all like try to be honest and like remember to look at the evidence in general. And like what my point I'm making is like people are kind of quick to take his side, I suppose, or if he was much uglier, maybe he kind of looked like a scumbag. If he was being accused of these things, maybe people would still be kind of rooting against him. So let's remember, guys, the law is objective.
He's got crowds of cheering fans who welcome him to court every morning, of course, because they just love Johnny Depp. Well, I mean, look at it this way. I happen to think Johnny Depp is a decent actor. He has the range to play Ed Wood and Hunter Thompson, right? As well as Captain Jack Sparrow. So I think that he's an actor. I mean, he could even play Sweeney Todd. I think he's an actor with some depth and range. I think he's a decent actor. On the other hand, I think he's a very, very troubled person who told us about his rough childhood and why he abused alcohol and drugs to numb the pain from that childhood and his abusive dad. Of course, that cuts both ways. But I think he's a very troubled person, very talented actor. I think he had a hell of a terrible problem with alcohol and drugs that was killing him and would have destroyed both him and his career in time if he didn't get any kind of handle on it. And I know that their relationship was toxic. It's hard for people, I am opposed to the celebrity worship mentality. People don't realize that these celebrity heroes of here, these movie stars, these rock stars, are ordinary people, probably with more dysfunctional lives than ordinary people, precisely because of the wealth and the fame and the drugs that they surround themselves in and the culture they're in. So my first instinct on a trial like this is not so much to care, but just to have sympathy with the fact that these are some messed up people who should never have been with one another in the first place. The allegations that she's making and even some of the specific allegations he's making, I don't know. I think we have to wait for the end of the evidence. And even at the end of that, we may never know for sure what went on behind closed doors in the Depp household.
That's right. And Johnny Depp was also in the movie Blow, about a drug dealer based on a true story, I think, who is largely credited for bringing cocaine to the US. So that movie impacted me. I remember, I mean, definitely made me think it was cool to get involved with, with some of the wrong types of people, and that I thought crime was cool. Boy, was I wrong.
Crime is not cool. I can tell you after 18 years as a prosecutor. And they're not selfish either. These are the most self-destructive human beings out there, whether they get caught by the cops or not doing their crime.
Yeah.
The thieves, violent people, gang people, people who have serious drug problems are all just really self-destructive, committing suicide on the installment plan. So to call these criminals selfish who are in jail is to get it exactly backwards.
Yeah.
And dysfunctional rich people who can get away with drug addiction for God knows how long are getting away with self-destruction in a very tragic way, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, if something's illegal and if getting caught doing it is will have serious consequences, then I think it's immoral to do that, even if it shouldn't, a law that shouldn't be on the books. And what I mean is, it's like you're taking an unnecessary risk, and if you're selling it, if this is part of your financial life, your business life, you have no enforceable contract. So now you're dealing with the lowest elements of society. I mean, a show like Breaking Bad, I think, demonstrates this perfectly. There's nothing, meth maybe shouldn't be illegal, but getting involved in the world of meth means you're going to become a monster in order to succeed.
And you'll be dealing with the most untrustworthy, often the most violent, often, you're absolutely right. It's a dangerous thing to do. In fact, one of the reasons why prohibition of alcohol, for example, was horrible, because of precisely that. It was subsidizing Al Capone and the worst thugs in American crime at the time. And you want it to be safe for people and you want the drugs to be safe for themselves. Legalize the drugs. I'm not advocating drug use. I'm just saying that it would be infinitely safer if they did legalize it. But given the state that we have, in movie stars, though, Johnny Depp testified he's got people, he never had to worry about that. He had people who would get his drugs and give him a bottomless supply of whatever drug he wanted. But so much of the social life of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard from 2010 to 2018 was just a drug-fueled mess. They were doing hard drugs and drinking themselves into stupors constantly. Suicide on the installment plan.
Yeah, I mean, drugs should be legalized. All of these types of preventive laws should not be on the books, and they cause so much damage that could make for an entire episode. Even, and I say this even though I benefited. My life ultimately benefited from getting in trouble, and it inspired me to clean up my act. I had a trial where I had a lawyer there trying to get this misdemeanor thrown out because he found a precedent that said the cops spending that much time searching my car, like in the past, has not been admitted. It was a dramatic scene, but yeah, ultimately, what's that?
Did they get the evidence suppressed?
No, at the end, I could have just not had a lawyer and probably gotten the same.
Really had the same.
But it was cool. It like showed me, you could take action and try to challenge the system, and it was exciting,
And there's an actor out there who I think recently has given us an example of just that, Robert Downey Jr. Mm-hmm. He was his own personal life was on a slow descent with drugs into a pit, it seems to me. He got put in jail, and he says he came out a whole new man, turned around, doesn't do drugs, became more serious about his career, did those Iron Man movies, and now he's turned it around. And I have respect for that, frankly.
Oh, yeah. And there's so much sobriety in Hollywood. It really is amazing. The city known for obviously the opposite of sobriety has so many winners, like just so many people who really want what life has to offer. And actually, going back to my little journey, the lawyer who defended me in court and made a whole spectacle of trying to throw out this case, I actually ran into him some years later at a 12-step meeting. We both happened to be sober at that point, and we bonded. So that was a beautiful, beautiful kind of coming full circle. All right. Very cool. Yeah, back to the super chat. Ellie, the newest member, sent us 666 Australian. Sounds like a Mark Pellegrino fan with the dollar amount. She asks, as men, how's it feel to have the idea of abuse towards men taken seriously by so many? How does it feel to have the idea of abuse towards men taken seriously by so many? Like, as though, I guess, implying that normally people roll their eyes.
Boy, is that true. When I was 20 years ago, when I was prosecuting domestic violence cases, I was well aware of the fact that men can very frequently be victims, totally passive, totally peaceful, trying to avoid it, and yet be repeatedly physically injured by their female partner. Men can be the victim, even though they're usually bigger and stronger. Men can still be the victims of domestic violence. But of course, there's this huge social stigma. Oh, I get beat up by my wife. I'm afraid of my wife. Guys don't normally want to do this. I would add to that, even more so, male rape. When, and you don't have to be gay even, and talk about an underreported crime. Men are very frequently the victims of sexual abuse. And if women underreport sexual assault cases, men even more, I mean, at a quantum level, even more or even less report sexual abuse on their part. And in this case, what's interesting is so many people have sympathy for their movie star Johnny Depp, who's claiming to be the victim. And frankly, he's got better corroboration so far that I've seen, I add with a big proviso so far, than Amber has for any of the violence she claims against her. And I mean, he has an independent witness that says she just hauled off and slugged him straight in the face. Yeah, that happens. She kept running. If we believe his side of the story, she kept running after him. He kept saying, look, this is just going to get ugly. Let me leave the scene. Let me have some time alone. Let's cool off. She would chase after him to pull him back to the scene. We have like 3 different independent witnesses that corroborate that. And that's even on the tapes, the surreptitious tapes between Johnny and Amber, where he's saying, look, I just want to get away. But I just want you to deal with the problem, Johnny. Mm-hmm. And on none of those tapes does he appear to admit to ever doing any of the horrific things that she claims he did.
Yeah. And this gets me thinking, I guess, in answering the question, how's it feel to see this? I mean, I think like a lot of people, I'm not that sensitive to the plight of many men. So I tend to, like many people, just kind of assume that most abuse is by men towards women. I mean, and most probably is, but that virtually all abuse is towards women by men. And so if I hear about a man getting abused or he claims he was falsely accused, then it's like, okay, whatever. It's like I'm not that emotionally responsive. So I mean, this is an opportunity for me to kind of to be more fair and objective.
Cops respond to a domestic violence call at 1:30 in the morning, and so frequently they have the thankless job of having to separate 2 bloody drunks who are in the middle of a domestic fight. But whatever, even if the situation isn't one where there's any obvious signs of violence, it's the guy who's removed from the scene, whether it's his apartment or not. I mean, how many cases have I heard just that? And it's the guy who's usually removed from the scene. That's just the knee-jerk reaction of law enforcement. Now, it's true in most cases. Look, male domestic violence does outnumber female domestic violence cases. There are cultural reasons, and as I say, the guys usually are the bigger and stronger. But there is a significant number. There are many cases in which men are the victims, and that gets totally discounted. And that's more of for psychological reasons. You can say to yourself, okay, why does the woman stay around? I mean, how many times in domestic violence cases, I love him, I need him to be at home, to be the dad, my kids, we need him to support us economically. So please drop the charge, Mr. Valliant. I know he put me in the hospital by breaking my jaw. And there I am trying to tell her it's only going to get worse. And are you going to wait for him to kill you? No, we have to prosecute him. And I know it's a tragic situation, but there they are begging. And then there are psychological reasons. I know, believe me, he'll make it up to me and ... Guys go through similar things. It's a psychological thing. And yeah, they should leave the toxic relationship. And you say, well, it's your fault for staying in that toxic relationship. But I have to say, whatever the psychology is one way or another, it's the person engaged in violence who is the criminal. It's the person who initiated the force who is the criminal. And that's the person who needs to be incarcerated to protect the other potential women out there, not to mention the woman that he's been abusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I guess the one of the ways the world can become a much better place is if as many people as possible kind of take action to better their own lives. So if someone has like abusive tendencies, like they tend to lose their temper and get violent, get help. Now is the time to, like no matter what part of this equation you're on, And of course, if you're at the receiving end of this, you need to realize enabling this type of thing is only going to cause more damage. And imagine, you're dealing with large quantities of money, people that are just so darn rich. Like some of these people, like now, like the stakes are super high. It means it would spell a dramatic change of lifestyle to press charges against somebody, and that has implications for your kids and all that. So values are at stake.
Toxic relationships, whichever side you're on. If she's getting you so mad that you're losing control, get the heck out of that relationship. If he has hit you once, get out of that relationship. It's not going to get better. If he's broken your arm or broken your jaw, the next step could be the morgue. So get out of those relationships. They're not good for you. They're not good for the other person. It should be a mutually positive thing in a relationship. So my wife and I will listen to what's going on in the trial with Johnny Depp. We'll just look at each other. We'll quietly hold hands and say, "My goodness, we have a wonderful relationship." Even if we snap at each other occasionally, man, at least we're not violently going after each other. It makes everyone else's relationship look healthy, I can tell you.
Yeah, don't hold hands too tight. I don't know where the line is when it becomes violence, but I mean, yeah, everyone get help. See a therapist, even if you're not sure you want to end the marriage or relationship. Like, speak, get help. Roland with $4.99 says another excellent show on another somber topic. Thanks, James. And Robert with $2 says hedonism is no fun. Says by Robert. That's Robert Bach quote.
What a great quote that is. Hedonism is no fun. If you were just short-term pursuing pleasure without any long-term indication of the consequences or any principles to help you deal with the long-term, you are not going to get pleasure at the end of the day, much less happiness. Yeah, hedonism's no fun. Yeah, great line.
Yeah. It's also not as simple as people think. It's like a whole school of philosophy where pleasure is the standard of good and evil. It's never as easy as it looks. Marilyn with $5 says, so insane that they don't just walk away from each other permanently. They each must have gotten something out of it.
Yeah. Psychologically, if I were to, I have happened to listen to the psychologists and the therapists here, and the marriage counselor involved, and to listen to them testify. So I do have a little psychological insight here, but it's still the danger. Even there's still the danger of psychologizing. But I have to agree with you. When you heard the psychologists, they do kind of give you the psychological background on these people as to why they were getting something, still feeding their, needs in a psychological way, despite the ugly abusiveness, the horrible contempt they had as an intimate couple. When there's contempt of that kind, it is the death knell of a romantic or intimate relationship. It really must be. And when that kind of mutual contempt happens, come on, walk away.
All right, we got one more super chat from Liran. He sent over 6 shekels. He says, Amber Heard reminds me of Lillian Reardon. And you? I mean, yeah, what do you think? So to me, like, Lillian Reardon is very proper, like very kind of knows how to behave and keeps her composure and happens to be like a despicably motivated person. Maybe Betty Pope or someone like that, just like a reckless lush or just a crazy person.
Lillian stayed with Hank precisely because he was rational, productive, and consistent. And Lillian Reardon would not have put up with an alcoholic who was destroying himself for 5 minutes because he's not a good meal ticket. And nor would she have the psychological power to get into his head like she did Hank's. Amber got into Depp's head in an entirely different way. So no, I wouldn't make the comparison to Lillian Reardon. I'm not sure there is a, kind of, borderline paranoid psychotic in Ayn Rand, because they really don't make terribly interesting ethical cases. But I can't think of an Amber Heard in Rand's literature.
Yeah,
low.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem like Rand's characters are that often like in such a deep hole of like chemical addiction and that type of abusive relationship. Mostly you kind of see what they believe and like their attitude towards life and how that ends up manifesting. But
I'm the closest to Stephen Mallory from The Fountainhead. he actually takes a shot at Ellsworth Toohey, admittedly a crazy deed. And if Howard Rourke hadn't intervened, he would have continued, I think, down on a personal self-destructive spiral. Howard Rourke sort of stops him in that spiral downward of self-destruction that almost certainly would have occurred with that tragic sense of life he was developing. But yeah, there's someone who took it out violently and was losing it in a self-destructive way in Rand's literature.
Right. Yeah. So The Fountainhead is a deeply psychological book, and you get to kind of explore the humanity of people like Stephen Mallory and Gail Wynand. You kind of get to see that, like, even people who sometimes act monstrously or just in some way very irrationally, like there could, there's something to explore and to understand there. So
exactly.
I haven't actually watched Amber Heard yet. I'm not sure if I've even ever seen her on screen. So like, I don't have that emotional response to Amber Heard. I'm a Johnny Depp fan, definitely. Like most people, I've seen his biggest hits and all of that.
I have to say, I'm not impressed with her as an actress, either in film or, and this is maybe a cruel statement, but on the stand. I have interviewed literally thousands of women who have alleged rape. I have prosecuted literally hundreds of cases of rape. And in terms of the trials, I've done over 100 felony jury trials, which all secured convictions, thanks, of rape. And seeing her testify, I've seen a lot of rape victim statements. If I were to be on the jury, I don't find her terribly credible. I really don't. She didn't report this properly. She doesn't seem to be believable when confronted with it as an allegation. But as a professional actress, boy, she sure knows how to turn on the tears at just the right moment. And both of them, when they testify, I have to say that's been the case. Both of them have brought their, actors are very aware of their body language and how they come across, and making eye contact to the jury, and developing sympathy just with expression. They're actors. They know what they're doing. And even so, I wish Johnny Depp would take those sunglasses off of his face. I think jurors connect when they can see your eyes. I wish Amber Heard would pull that hair away from her eyes for the same reason. But otherwise, they really know how to present to the jury. And still, I was unimpressed with her testimony, if she really was the victim of those horrific things she claims to have been.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's amazing. My opinion.
That's personal opinion. It's pretty amazing how, to think back the history of humanity, what the effort it took to have basic technology, to have a civilization advanced enough for people to invent acting for like entertainment purpose. And just now we're at a point where we've got this highly technological society where we have professional actors in courtroom, and we're trying to decide as we're watching them from our various devices around the world if we believe them or not, or if they're acting. The truth is stranger than fiction, and there used to be no such thing as fiction too. That's another invention. Wow, life's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It is. And once upon a time, and not so far back, it was perfectly legal for husbands to rape their wives. What a medieval situation that is. I mean, we have come in the last century or two light years in terms of progress about protecting women, violence against women. There are women's shelters today that will take in a very anonymous way and protect women who claim to be victims of domestic violence. Amber, with her resources, certainly had all that. And she was, by her own admission, hanging around a guy who was apparently repeatedly sexually assaulting her in painful and invasive ways. With a bottle and digitally doing a body cavity search when he suspected her and stuff. I mean, if what she says is true, Johnny Depp belongs in prison. But as I say, she doesn't have even a fraction of the evidence that would be required to prove a criminal case of that kind.
One more question, sort of prompted by that. So yes, through history, women have suffered horrible abuse as just a matter of course. Other groups, let's say, if you designate a skin color, people of that skin color have suffered horrible abuse for countless generations. A lot of people I think they look at a case like this and they might say, like, look, even if Johnny Depp is innocent, like, let's make an example of him. Or like, even if this white man being accused of a hate crime against a black guy, maybe he's innocent. But you know what? Think of all the blacks who were falsely convicted or lynched in the Jim Crow South. Like this is war, they would say. So like in actual war, you know, if Japan attacks the U.S., then the U.S. take out as many Japanese cities and kill as many people as necessary to end this threat. So why is this different? If there's sort of like a legitimate war against racism, sexism, if there's an actual war, so to speak, a cultural war to protect people's rights, then why is this different? If you could like articulate why it's different when it comes to someone on trial or facing accusations, why is it important that we not treat people like indispensable sort of pawns in this war?
Justice can only be done on an individual level. Therefore, if there was racial injustice in the past, it was a gross violation of the individual rights of the people involved. Racism is the collectivist evil behind it. More collectivist motivation, blaming innocent individuals, would be only to repeat the very injustice that we're supposed to be fighting here. No, the only way to solve the problem of racism is not through more racism. The only way to fix individual injustices in the past, even if there was a million of them, is not to now have a policy of more individual injustices in the future. No, the only rational response is to do justice on a case-by-case basis, individually, appropriately, without regard to either side's public passion, sentiment, emotion. All that has to be set aside. It is this one case, and every case has to be judged on its own evidence and only its own evidence. And I cannot tell you how angry I get about the idea of our courts being used to make political points. It is the wrong forum to make political points as such. Go make political speeches, write op-ed articles, go have peaceful demonstrations in Washington, D.C. or something. What you don't do is take it out on innocent individuals. I have to say, in recent months, I have been somewhat impressed by the jury outcomes in the United States. I was pleased when those white guys who chased down that black trespasser in North Carolina got the convictions they got. I was pleased when the cop who recognized a taser for a gun got the manslaughter. I was also pleased when Rittenhouse was acquitted. I mean, he probably was stupid being out there, and in my view, but still, technically, he was acting in self-defense. I have been reasonably impressed, even the Floyd cop case, I have been reasonably impressed with how juries have been coming out in the United States on decisions. I believe in the jury system, and I think they do a pretty good job when given the chance to do individualized justice, which is their duty under law.
Mm-hmm. So bettering things within a civilization is nothing like going to war with a foreign country. Very different.
Poor analogy. See, a country where we don't have jurisdiction and the whole country is now against us, that whole country is a target because they are the infrastructure that's making that war possible. And we don't have control over that jurisdiction in a law enforcement way. We cannot, no, the analogy breaks down entirely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's important that people be aware of that, because a lot of people, they really do think, they're like, look, there's this group of people that keeps hurting our group of people. And if we sort of harm or kill enough of their innocence, then they'll always think twice before coming near one of our innocents. But that is not how things are solved within a civilization.
How justice is achieved or how rights are protected, it has to be done on an individualized basis. It must be. And the courts of this country are not the places to make political points.
So,
for God's sake.
It's about rule of law, right? There needs to be an objective process of dealing with people. We cannot have anger and revenge be the motivator.
The statue of Lady Justice is blindfolded, not because she's blind, because she's blind to public passion, public sentiment, all these irrelevant things that have nothing to do with the logic and facts of this individual case. That's what that means. And yeah, It is, and unfortunately, we see it from the federal level on down. Our courts, criminal and civil, have been in effect weaponized by politics, and we're increasingly becoming like that. And a country that once had a reasonably, probably the best justice system in the world, is now turning into, I hate to use the derogatory term, a banana republic in terms of the level of its corruption of the court system.
Yeah, I'm amazed we've lasted this long and still have something to hold on to, given how irrational the culture seems to be getting. And that speaks to the ingenious work of the founders and of many people since then to maintain the system. We got a super chat from Shazbot saying, did Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have the option to have the trial not televised? Do you know?
No. Well, I think the ultimate decision on local trials, but the Supreme Court has kept cameras out, but the audio in, right? But it varies from state to state and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Here, because the Washington Post was, neither of them have any connections to Virginia, other than the fact that the Washington Post published the op-ed. So it's being filed. The suit is being filed in Fairfax, Virginia. There, it's up to the local judge to decide, and she was the one who decided that because it was a case of public interest, let's have the cameras catch all this that they can catch.
Right on. Okay. Well, on that note, let's end this television is what we call this televising of this discussion. I think we're out of time. Thank you, James. This was wonderful, and hope we can have another legal Wednesday or Tuesday one of these days again soon.
Always fun, Rucka.
Always fun indeed. All right, coming up today, we've got nothing. The exception that proves the rule or highlights the rule. Normally, there's a lot of content, so please consider supporting the channel. Hit that join button or go to the website linked below and in the chat to become a member and help this thing sustain and grow. Because as you can see by the world out there, the world needs some help right now. All right, and then tomorrow it's back with the Daily Objective. It's the Thursday Collective. Look forward to that. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Take care.